All right, what up, everybody? It's Ferment Podcast. Dee is in the house. What's up, Dee?
Hey, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for coming to Colorado. No, I'm not in Colorado.
No, we're not. I'm in Colorado.
You're in Colorado. We're in Phoenix.
Yeah.
I'm starting off great. Yeah, no, thanks for coming to our Vineyard Conference.
Man, it's an honor. I've enjoyed such a rich relationship with Vineyard in the last couple of years. So we were supposed to do this last year.
We were supposed to do this last year, and then I think I invited you to something else that got canceled.
Yeah.
So this is like third try, right?
Yeah, and I tried to make something. I'm like, man, just fly me in and let's write songs, man.
I know, we're going to do that. We're still going to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, Dee, there's some other stuff I want to talk to you about.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about your life.
Okay.
I want to talk about songs.
Okay.
But first, we need to talk about the NBA. So can we just do this first? NBA hot takes. I just want whatever, the season started yesterday.
Yeah.
And I know you're an NBA guy, so can you just give me the Dee Wilson NBA hot takes,
and
we'll start there.
Dee Wilson NBA hot takes. I think the Lakers are going to be a dumpster fire.
Oof.
I think they're going to be. I think it's this is giving me big Karl Malone, Gary Payton, Shaq, Kobe vibes on this team. So I think that's going to happen. I think Ben Simmons gets traded at some point for either Dame Lillard, or Draymond Green and Andrew Wiggins. I think he gets traded to the West Coast because they don't want to see him on the East Coast at all.
That's right.
And the only viable options are either Portland or Golden State.
I would like to see him at Golden State because he's a guy that doesn't need to take the shots.
Bingo.
And Golden State has a ton of shooters anyway.
Yes. And they need a low post defense person. Draymond's kind of out of that prime of his life now.
And Ben can guard all five spots.
He can he can run the floor. He can pass the ball. He's everything Golden State needs.
Man, we're becoming a sports podcast, kids. That's what's happening. Okay, let me ask you a couple more questions here.
Okay.
You've mentioned a little bit about the Lakers, but I want to talk about Russell.
Sure.
I have huge problems with Russell.
Me too.
But what do you think about Russell at the Lakers?
I think Russell Westbrook and LeBron James have the same problem, is that they neutralize better players around them.
Ball stoppers.
Not necessarily ball stoppers, but everything relies so much on them that it limits the good players around. Now, LeBron's always the best player, so it doesn't matter, right?
That's right.
It doesn't super matter, but he's limited really good players around him. Russ, since he's not the best player, has limited the better players that have been around him.
High volume shooter.
Yeah, high volume shooter, high turnover,
Yeah.
Not very efficient, all that type of stuff. Serge Ibaka went out of his way to develop a 17-footer for West, and he still wouldn't get him that shot. He would just do the drive and dunk thing. Yeah. So me too. I have big problems with Russell Westbrook. 3
more NBA questions.
Okay. I'm really loving this.
Yeah. I know it. Well, see, here's the thing. Not many worship leaders can have this conversation with me, so I'm going to take it.
I know. I appreciate it.
Well, when Josh Baldwin came and hung out with me, we talked basketball. Not everybody can do this, so we do it. Okay.
Yeah.
3 more. Number 1. Is he still undervalued?
I think he's properly valued.
Properly valued. Okay.
Yes.
Can you give a defense?
I just think an MVP was his ceiling.
Yeah.
And if he wins another one, he'll be 7-foot Steve Nash.
Yeah.
Like, you should have won 1, you should not win 2. Right?
Yeah.
I think he's. But now that I live in Colorado, I guess I have to be a homer.
Yeah. I was gonna say, well, this is why I'm bringing up him because you're there now, so I'm like, I'm just feeling out. Like, what do you feel about the Joker?
Colorado people really think the Nuggets are something, and I think they're a very good team.
Yeah.
It just sucks you're in the same conference with LeBron and Steph Curry.
Yeah.
And I don't know where you're gonna go with that.
Well, and the Suns aren't getting worse, so there's a lot happening there.
But the Suns are gonna get worse before they get better.
Yeah.
Worse is right around the corner. As soon as Chris Paul has to retire,
and
he's hitting that age where he's going to have to make that decision pretty soon.
Yeah.
The Suns still need a point guard like Chris Paul, and there's nobody like him.
No,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, once in a generation.
Yeah.
Okay, thoughts on the Knicks?
I don't think about the Knicks.
You don't think about the Knicks, okay.
I think it's unfortunate. I think, until they get a bona fide star there, that's young, that can carry that franchise for a long time.
Julius is awesome, but he's too much of a banger.
He's not it. Yeah, he's not it. He bounced around the league for a little while. He's not that guy. He again, very improved.
He's an all-star.
All-star.
Yeah.
Very solid player.
But he's not transcendent.
I don't know if RJ's going to get there. I think they need a Zion. Yeah. Or they need to find a kid that can go there and be a bona fide superstar.
Yeah, especially in New York, because they're. I mean, and then you got the Nets, and so they feel like the poor cousin, even though they got the history.
The Knicks have to be viable.
Yeah,
it makes the NBA better when the Knicks are viable.
That's right. Okay, last one. Okay. Preseason predictions for it's not preseason now, but
way too early predictions.
Way too early predictions for the finals.
I'm going to go out and say Golden State.
Yes.
Versus.
See, the East is hard, isn't it?
East is tough, but Giannis has a 17-footer now.
Yeah.
And if Giannis can just pull up and hit a 15-footer with a hand in his face, it's night-night.
I don't hate it. But
it's night-night.
But I'm very interested this year in what happens with Atlanta.
You are?
I am.
Why?
Because I thought Trey. Like, we knew he was good, but then I thought he elevated last year. And if somebody can just play a little bit of defense and let him do his thing, I just wonder.
The issue with Trey is that there's only really been a couple true points that have actually led their team to the promised land as Zeke, Isaiah Thomas, and Steph Curry, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Now, Isaiah Thomas is a different league of basketball, so you really can't have him in this conversation just because that league was so different.
Yeah.
But Steph, while he was the center, he wasn't really the center of the team. Yeah. Clay could shoot. Draymond was defense, and he was a playmaker as well. Like, they eventually got Kevin Durant, right? Yeah. So it's like, unless Trey is willing to be this kind of nebulous superstar, which I don't think he is.
Yeah.
He went to New York and showed out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
so you think that's who he is? You think he's like alpha? He's got to be alpha.
I think he has to be alpha. That's his personality. I don't mind it. I love watching him.
It's
fun. But I don't know if he can do that by himself. Now, Cam, I always said I thought Cam, of the Zion, RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish trio at Duke.
You liked him the best.
I liked Cam Reddish the best. And I'm interested in seeing what Cam Reddish can do healthy, full season with Trey. Doesn't have to be the solo of the offense, but has a centralized role.
Well, he can shoot, and I like his size.
Oh, and he's ready.
Yeah.
He wants to put the dagger into your face.
Dee, why do we not talk about this stuff more? Like, we got to do. I just want to quit the Ferment, and I just want to do an NBA podcast because I have so many more.
In my second life, the second life on The Office. Yeah. In my second life, I'm a sports broadcaster.
That's right. And Dee Wilson here, everybody, giving the hot takes. Okay, Dee, let's just shift gears here.
Cool.
Let's talk about life for a second.
Yes.
I know who you are. I know you do the Common Hymnal thing. I know you're a songwriter. I know you're in Colorado, worship leader. I think a lot of people in the Vineyard also know some of that.
Some of it, yeah, I think so.
But I think there's a lot of people in our world who don't know, like who is Dee and where did he come from? So can you just tell us, who are you? Where'd you come from? What was your family life?
Yeah.
Hit us with some of that.
Terrell Demetrius Wilson is my birth name. I'm finding a renewal of the people that are newly in being I can't speak right now. I've been on planes too much.
That's right.
The people that are newly developing community with me are calling me Terrell, which is awesome.
Oh.
So Terrell Demetrius Wilson is my birth name. I was born in Country Club Hills, Illinois. My mother was a worship leader. My dad worked at Unilever. I was homeschooled to 5th grade.
Yeah.
I fell in love with Jesus sometime around 16, for real, even though I grew up in church. And then I fell in love with songwriting probably the same year.
Yeah. So was your mama a songwriter as well?
Yes. Yeah. My mom was a songwriter and a worship leader. I got called, weirdly enough, into ministry at 13. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to either play baseball or be a chemist.
Yeah.
But God said, no, you can't do either of those things.
Yeah. It's not happening.
It's not happening.
Yeah.
And so I just been living into that really ever since. I have a beautiful wife named Jennifer at home.
Yeah.
We have a sweet little spicy baby girl named Adelle Rose.
And your wife's a worship leader too,
My wife is a worship leader and songwriter too. People don't know that Jen can write.
Okay.
I'm putting that out there. She's going to be mad that I said it, but I don't care.
Well, Jen, come over. Get on the Zoom, Jen.
Yeah, hop on the Zoom. I've been trying to tempt her to hop on over to the Zoom.
Yeah.
And my baby girl is starting to fall in love with music and arts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's us. We just moved to Colorado Springs 2 months ago.
Yeah.
To be part of New Life Church.
Yeah.
Out there, which is, like I was telling you earlier, it's like this dream I didn't really know I had.
Yeah.
But God is like now starting to propel me into things that I couldn't really dream of or think, right?
Yeah.
And so it's super cool.
So you're a mountain man now.
I don't want to be. I want to be a Chicagoan in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, so let's just talk about Chicago here for a second, especially as it relates to like worship and the Black gospel scene.
Yes.
Okay. I know you got like ties in that world.
Yeah, for sure.
But why is Chicago, why is it kind of a home for gospel?
Because I mean, partly, wherever sort of like the Great Migration kind of settled, I think a certain people may have settled in some places and not in others, right?
Yeah.
I can't really answer that. Like, why is New York the home of hip hop? I don't know, but it's just the dudes that settled there in Brooklyn and the Bronx started this thing, and it propelled forward, and it went everywhere. Detroit, Chicago are kind of that, and obviously the South, Atlanta, Georgia, Mississippi, all that stuff that. It's like, I don't know. It's the thing that just kind of took. The blues are heavy in Chicago as well as is jazz. So I think some mix of all that stuff came together, and it birthed out some amazing gospel songwriters and singers, some amazing musicians.
Yeah.
In that kind of tri-state area, it's given us a huge gift.
Yeah, I was talking to Calvin.
Yes.
In this room yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Am I sitting in Calvin's seat?
You're sitting in Calvin's seat.
Can I take it home with me?
It's literally yours. Yeah.
Calvin is
he's a monster.
He's a monster.
Yeah,
sure.
But we were talking about this yesterday, and we weren't talking about Chicago, but we were just talking about gospel, and especially Black gospel, and especially the role it plays, not just in worship, but in the way that it has basically been a launch pad for musicians all over the world, like
Absolutely.
Right, like R&B, soul, whatever.
You find a tour anywhere in the country, you're going to find at least one gospel musician on that tour.
Maybe more.
Anywhere in the world, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, how many times have I listened to somebody's documentary or podcast, and maybe they're a pop singer, and they always ask, well, when did you start singing? They say at church, right?
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to me that Chicago doesn't just have tentacles in my brain in the gospel world, but it's really this. You see it just
everybody goes. Yeah,
everybody goes out, and
everybody goes out.
Yeah. So it's really, really amazing to me.
It's such an amazing, and I mean, part of it is just how our community shapes up, how like our church community shapes up. There's always, the guy, and then there's like the guy maybe right behind them, and then there may be like 10 kids that just watch those two guys. The after church jam where guys just keep playing. Yeah. And little homies are watching. Eventually, they get on and get to show what they got. And it's like there's this training culture. Calvin probably has 12 little homies. Yeah. You know what I mean? In Chicago, that are killers, just like he is.
Deadly.
Deadly, and play multiple things. And it's like there's always kind of somebody else coming. Yeah. And there's always, because music is so big, there's always a place for them to go.
Is that your story? Like, I mean, you said your mama was a worship leader.
Yeah.
Like, is that like your little kid and mom's doing her thing, and you're on the front row? I don't know. I'm just imagining like.
Yeah, in a sense, like, in a little sense, it's different for songwriters, I think, because even though I do have Percy Beatty, Andre Ambrose, like the guys that are in the city that are like my OGs, like my mentors and things like that. At the same time, some of it kind of just had to be developed in my room. I had to figure out how to write, and eventually I got on a project that Andre Ambrose was producing. He took me under his wing. I got to sing at a church where Percy was the MD. He took me under his wing, and it's like that kind of stuff kind of happens along the way. It's a little different from musicians. They kind of have to be out.
Yeah,
a little bit. They have to be inner and shed and practice and stuff.
Yeah.
But they get to be out a little more. Songwriters are kind of in our little cocoons.
That's right.
Developing our gift.
Do you remember the first song you wrote?
The first song I wrote, it was I was coming from baseball practice, and I between the bus stop and my front door, I think I had written a song, and that was the first song. I didn't have notes I didn't have a pen or paper or anything. Yeah. It was just like I can't really explain why I did it. I wasn't like trying to be a songwriter, but I just remember hopping off the bus, walking home. It was like a 15-minute walk between the bus and home. I had written a song.
Yeah.
I can't sing it because A, it's terrible. B, I don't super remember it.
Yeah.
But I do know for a fact
that's what happened.
Yeah.
So talk to me about this. What about after that, when you're like maybe you're gonna write some more, but when did you write enough songs and you're like, okay, I'm gonna show somebody and I'm gonna make this a part of church?
Yeah, that's weird. I started showing my mom at first. She was thrilled because she'd always, probably since I was 10, told me you should be writing songs, and I had always been like, nah, I'm cool. So I think the first person I started showing them to was her, just to say like, hey, I'm trying this out, you know. Yeah. Then we were part of House of Prayer in Chicago. So I would try out a song or two there every once in a while just to see. It was so low key. It was only 10 people, only ever in the room. Yeah. So I would just try it out with those 10 folks and see like, is this something that works? And I would, tuck it back in. I actually don't remember when I showed a song to a person for the first time anyway. Yeah. And it actually might have been high school. Yeah. When I think about it, I think I might have showed a song to my choir teacher in high school. She let me teach that song to our class.
And was it a worship song or was it just
it was like
a pop song?
It was a pop song. I was watching Good Morning America one day, and there was this kid that had like this terminal sickness, but all he talked about was his home in heaven and what his home in heaven would look like. And I didn't know at the time, but like that's the truest songwriter moment where you're watching something random and it gets you, and then all of a sudden you're off to the races, Yeah. And so I wrote this song called When We Get There. I showed it to my teacher, and my choir teacher in school, and she said, okay, tomorrow we're learning Terrell's song. And she let me teach it. I had to learn how to teach parts. We sang it in competitions. Like, it was one of those things that was just like, what the heck is happening?
Yeah. So is that when it started to feel real for you? Like, oh, this is who I am.
It started to feel like, oh, there's something that I have that does something to people. That's really the only language I could put around it. Was like these words have an effect on people. Yeah. And they react positively to it. So I think I want to do this. Like, I don't know if I want to do it for a career, but I'm like, I just want to do this more often.
Yeah. I love that.
And I'll do it for free.
That's right. That's right. It's who I am.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's shift gears again.
Okay.
Talk to me about Common Hymnal.
Yes. Common Hymnal is the marriage between worship and social conscience.
Yeah. Because the website says praise and protest.
Praise and protest, worship and social conscience.
Yeah.
Kind of synonymous with those things. And I've been part of it since I've basically known Malcolm, which is about 5 or so years, maybe a little more. Yeah. And we're dedicated to writing the songs that, we don't think anybody else is gonna write. I remember being with one of my friends in Common Hymnal, Ben Hardesty. We were at this camp. I think the two of us went to go get like groceries, just a bunch of groceries at the store. And I don't know why this lady asked, like, are you guys a band? I guess she didn't know, like, it's a white dude and a black dude could hang out in the store together.
It's your hair. It's just,
something about it.
Yeah, she's like, that guy's got to be in a band.
he can't hold a steady job.
Yeah, this guy's in a band. Look at that. Got the color and everything.
So she asked us, what kind of songs do you do? And we kind of told her, like, we're kind of just writing a bunch of honest songs. We want to worship God, but we also want to be honest and vulnerable. And so she said, will you write a song to a mother that lost her son to colon cancer? And me and Ben like stopped in our tracks, and we said we will absolutely write that song. Like, that's absolutely the song we're supposed to be writing. So we're kind of like, there's this cry of people in some of the mainstream church, some of the fringes of the mainstream church that are having a hard time finding songs that resonate with life. So much of our songs are from the mountaintop. Very few of our songs are from the valley, and very few of our songs are from beneath that. So Common Hymnal we're trying to, at the same time, express joy. We're also trying to help people find a home that haven't really found a home in mainstream church.
Yeah, and one of the things, this is just from my observation,
Yeah.
seeing what you guys are doing. You guys are giving a voice to pain.
Mm.
I see that,
Mm.
you know. I definitely see the joy, but on that part when you said a moment ago, writing the songs that nobody else will write, you know.
Yeah.
And there seems to be something too about anytime maybe something happens, maybe it's just because, gosh, it's been wild the last 3 years in America, but it seems like you guys have been able to have some words for the moments.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I've been very moved by that. Like, okay, there's a song for the moment. Yeah. And you know, we don't just have to sing the same 10 songs from the top CCLI.
Right.
Which, I mean, praise God for those songs. I mean, we need those too, but like, but there's other things happening.
Yeah, we found a way, I think, to name the pain. Mm-hmm. And so much in worship music, the pain is so metaphorical. It's a storm, it's an issue, it's a valley, it's a grave, it's thing. You know, it's all these different types of metaphors. We're like, no, it's racism. Yes. No, it's sexual abuse. Yes. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, because I think when you're able to name a pain, God can do a better job of healing it. He can heal anything. That's right. But I think God specifically can do different, more specified types of healings when you're saying, God, I'm lame. I've been blind since birth. Like, you know what I mean? Like all these things that Jesus, it wasn't nebulous pains that Jesus healed. Yeah. It was pains that people were able to name. Yeah.
One of the things I've learned in my life is Jesus doesn't heal our fake lives. Mm-hmm. He heals our actual lives.
Straight up.
So like, if I live in denial, and another way of saying that is if I don't name it, right? Yeah. So that's what I love about what you're saying here is like, we do need to name things. Yeah. We do need to name racism. Yeah. We do need to name just the injustices that exist in the world and the inequity that is prevalent in our culture. And if we can name it, then we're actually inviting Jesus into that thing, right? We can't hide behind some other. I love what you were saying there even a moment ago. We can't hide behind like the metaphor of a valley. You know, it keeps it safe.
Yeah.
You know?
It keeps it at a distance. Yeah.
It keeps it at a distance. Instead, if we name it, then maybe God can do something about it.
So, absolutely.
Love that. Can you talk to me about your song Rose Petals?
Ooh, yeah. I can try.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a song that's gotten me kind of in like good places and in trouble in other places. I think there are folks that like once Rose Petals is their first impression of me, they kind of put me in like a different category, in both good and bad ways. It's weird. Like 2020 was such a weird year for me, because in a year of such turmoil, Rose Petals was streaming through the roof, and so I was in my house like all of us, just kind of faced with this weird reality of writing this song 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, crying in my in-laws' basement. Like that wasn't written at a camp. That wasn't written with a specific, like nobody said, hey, we need a song with names in it. It was written because a friend of mine lost her brother to gun violence. And the kid, like so many other kids that are lost to gun violence, was a treasure. He was just a rose of a person. Beautiful kid. Didn't even do anything wrong. He was trying to go home. Somebody fought on the other side of the parking lot. Shots rang out. He caught a stray and it took his life. So that first line, the blood of my brother was spilled in the street. He was the rose that grew out of the concrete. Is my friend's brother. And then the rest of the song, I probably wrote it in 15 minutes. Again, just like it just kind of poured out on the page. There's ink and tears sharing the same space. And it took me maybe 2 years to even play that song out in public. I played it once at a club in Chicago, at a nightclub in Chicago that my friends, we used to do this thing called Refuge Sundays, where my friend Leroyce, who's on Chicago PD, he would host, and then my friend Chris opened the venue. So like all the local talent from Chicago, gospel, R&B, pop, everything would converge into this place called Refuge, and we just have a night of music. Yeah, it was kind of like our own personal Renaissance type of thing. And so one night we were just doing like acoustic nights, and I hadn't really planned on it. I sang a Justin Bieber cover, and then I played Rose Petals. And it was a bar on a Sunday night, and the place was just moved. Like everything moved. And I was like, oh crap, this song is scary. Because I never had a song that did that to a room before. It was just this weird mix of appreciation and tears, and it was just too many emotions. And it was all on 10. Yeah. And that freaked me out. So I tucked that song again for another year probably and said, no.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do that. And then I was at a Common Hymnal camp, my first Common Hymnal camp. I probably met Malcolm 6 months before that-ish. And he said, D, why don't you open up the camp with something fun? And I said, Rose, I don't know why. I have so many fun songs.
Yeah.
And he said, open up with something fun. He's like, but I want you to open up our night, our first night together. And something very deep, had to be the Holy Spirit, just said, Rose Petals. You have to do Rose Petals. Okay. In a room full of so many of my songwriting heroes, I hopped on a guitar and I played Rose Petals. And it was the same as that first night in Chicago. So you knew
it had power, like you.
Yeah,
it was confirmed again. Yeah,
it was confirmed again.
Yeah.
And that's the first time Malcolm had heard it. That's the first time any of them had heard it, and they were just wowed, marveled. I think that night Common Hymnal decided to record it, and then kind of the rest is just how it goes. We record the song, and I played that song so many different places. I get so many different reactions. Yeah. And it's hard to talk about because it's triumph and trauma and pain and pleasure and all these different things.
But it names something. So back to what we were saying
For
again,
sure.
right? Like it's putting its finger on something. It's like how many people have to get shot before? I mean, it's kind of the question it asks, right? Like it's like in some ways it's like
and for me the question really is, how often are we going to politicize human bodies and blood on the ground, right? God talks to Cain after he kills Abel, and he says, your brother's blood is crying out from the ground, right? Like, it's not just a thing, an object on the, that it's not just an object to God. It's a living, breathing organism that has words and is able to name whatever is happening to it. So why do we as humans see a human body, see blood on the ground, and want to pull it into our camps? Yeah. That's the question really that Rose Petals asks.
And use it as a prop
use it as a prop or political fodder to prove our point about one thing or the other. That's for me is where, because if somebody did that to my friend's brother, what would they say about him? You know what I mean? But he wasn't just some fodder for somebody to pick at. There were hundreds of people that loved that kid, that had hopes and dreams for that kid. He had hopes and dreams for himself. He was more than just an object for your argument.
That's a great word. Thanks for telling that story, by the way.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's really good.
Sorry it was so long.
No, you don't have to be sorry. It's great. We need to hear this, and we need to hear it from songwriters too. But that kind of leads me to the next thing I want to talk about, especially when it comes to writing songs, because I see this in you. I see it in Common Hymnal, and I see it with some other songwriters that I really love. Like my favorite songwriters are people who have something to say. They're not just taking stock phrases, especially in the worship world, because it's easy to just take in the worship world, especially if you have a little bit of a gift of melody. Yeah, you can just take some stock phrases about like, God, you're glorious, and everybody should love you, or whatever, and we can just kind of do this like Tetris. And go 1 4 5 6 4 1 6 4 1, and then at the end and just put it into the random worship song generator. But at the end, maybe it doesn't really touch anyone, and maybe it's because it's not really saying much. And because we've advanced so far in our church technology, we can make a song feel like it's touching someone. Right. Sure. Sometimes it's not the Spirit of God. Sometimes it's just like a great sound system.
Sometimes it's a great light. Sometimes
like
a great video.
Band.
Yeah.
Like it's just a great band.
If you get enough people manifesting in the video, people think they're feeling something when they hear the song.
That's right.
But the song isn't actually saying anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, talk to me about being a songwriter who has something to say.
For sure.
Yeah. Where does that come from, or how do you think about yourself?
I don't know that a songwriter. Well, I think a songwriter is a person with an ear and a heart, a good one, and I think the best songwriters do two things. One, they listen to the song. To me, a song isn't just the words I'm writing on the page. A song is a living, breathing entity that speaks and tells me what it needs and what it doesn't need, and when it's done and when it's not done. And Andre Crouch said that to a room of songwriters one time, and I took it home because I fully believe that if you serve the song, if you listen to the song, you'll always end up saying something, because the song is an extension of the Spirit of God, and the Spirit of God always has something to say. Therefore, a song always has something to say. That's the listening part. That's the listening part. I also think that songwriters, really good ones, in an effort to say something, can put themselves on a tightrope and write themselves off of it. And so,
say more about that.
Blood of my brother was spilled in the street. He was the rose that grew out of the concrete. That's the first line of Rose Petals.
And now what are you gonna do?
He's like, run a tightrope immediately. Now let's guide the listener through the tightrope to get to the end. But the only way to get to the end, right? The only way to get to that question at the end that's going to challenge us, which is, why do we politicize human blood, is to walk this tightrope together. And the more we walk this, if you trust me as a songwriter, and we walk this tightrope, we'll get to the other side and it'll pay off for you, right? So yeah, a tightrope. It's like, what are you, that first line of the song, what are you going to stick people with that A, is going to awaken them, but B, is gonna challenge them to see what lies beyond that next step. Really good songwriters can do that.
But then you talk about songwriter is listening but has a heart.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, what do you mean by heart?
So listening but has heart, like, that's the heart, right? It's like, I want the listener to go somewhere with me. I don't want, especially in church, right? Now more than ever, we lean toward our affirmations and our partialities in church. But
say more about that. That feels interesting.
It's like we want to sing about what we know, and then we want God to meet us in places of our own comfort where we know, right? We don't necessarily want the God that says, when you throw a party, invite the least. Yeah. Right? That was a bomb of a statement that Jesus said.
The ones who can't even invite you back.
Right. The one, right? Like, we don't want necessarily the God that says there's a shepherd that had 100 sheep, lost one, and went to go find the one, leaving the 100 behind, right? But that's who Jesus is. And so sometimes in our worship expression, our singing expression, we just want God to meet us in the parameters of our comfort and safety. We don't want him to blow those doors off. We don't even want him to really open the door and invite us out. We just want him to come in to our world, sit down, and then enjoy the dinner we've made for him.
Yeah, and just
right?
And just reaffirm everything that we've already believed.
Yeah, you're right. You don't got to change. Everything you think about me is right. Yeah. You got me paid. Good job. You figured out Jesus, right? Yeah. But that's not what God is like. So I think the job of songwriters and preachers, right? And they kind of go one of the same. I think Ephesians talked about, or Ephesians or Galatians. It says, like, as you're singing, you're teaching, right? You're instructing. So songwriters, specifically in the worship movement, have a responsibility to push people outside of those parameters. And if we don't, we're doing a disservice to them. So that's where the heart comes in. Like, you have to be willing and have a heart for people, to want them to explore the outside, the wilderness, the wild.
And that means, part of what I'm hearing you say is that means you have to have the heart that would allow yourself to experience that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we wouldn't want to be the people who tell people to do something or experience something that
we're not going after ourselves. Yeah. multiple times has been like, God, blow my doors off.
Yeah.
Why am I sitting here? This is so boring. And a walk with God is not a tiptoe through the tulips. A walk with God is an adventure. Peter went on one and he ended up in the ocean. Like, you know what I mean? Like, everybody that's ever gone on a walk with Jesus has signed up for an adventure. So why do we feel like this any different for us? I want to go on an adventure with God. I've been going on an adventure with God.
Yeah, you're in Colorado.
Right? Like, literally in the wilderness now. Like, but I've been going on an adventure with God, and it's frightening. It's uncomfortable. But I look at my daughter, and I look at the way in which she views the possibilities of the world now at 5. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. I look at how my wife is growing and flourishing and expounding what God has put into her, expanding what God has put into her. I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Yeah. Well, what you said a moment ago it just gives me another thought.
Yeah.
You're talking about, like, anybody who goes on a walk with Jesus goes on an adventure. It makes me think that all the disciples who got called by Jesus, when they said yes, they had no idea where they were going.
No clue.
They didn't know, right?
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, we'll go with you, Jesus. He's like, come with me.
Yeah.
But they don't know where they're going. And it's interesting that Jesus doesn't even really tell them. Right? He doesn't say, hey, guys, come with me. And listen, we're going to do a lot of walking. And eventually we're going to get to Jerusalem. I'm going to be killed and all this stuff. But it'll be all right. He isn't telling me that.
It's like unfolds pieces along the way. Even he tells Peter, like, even the way he told Peter what he was doing, like, follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. I'm sure Peter didn't know what that meant, right?
No, he had no clue. So there is something about, like, even the adventure of songwriting or trying to follow Jesus in that. Like, we are just we just keep saying yes. And where it goes, God, he just keeps leading us. And maybe one day he does what he does to you. He takes us out of Chicago and moves us to the mountains or whatever, You didn't know that was going to happen.
It was not a dream that I had.
And you didn't, and when you wrote Rose Petals, you didn't know that it was going to be this song that sort of like fit into 2020. Like
right. Yeah. There's no way we could know 2020 was going to happen at all.
No, it doesn't. And it also man, it's interesting. That also brings up this idea too, and I've heard some other writers talk about this, that the particular is universal. So your friend's death, you write this song, it's very specific, and then the particular becomes universal.
Yes.
It becomes a container for the whole year, our country, like what's happening in America.
Yeah, for a significant part of a decade, right? Like Rose Petals, once we released it, there was action just around it, and it's only kind of upticked as the world has kind of ramped up, in that specific area. And so there's no way to know it, but like you said, the particular is universal in a sense, right? And the more I see of the world, the more of that I see. Is that Chicago, LA, Phoenix, Sweden, London, folks are going through a lot of the same things. And everybody, it takes us back to Common Hymnal, right? Everybody needs a song, specifically in the worship movement, specifically in mainstream or the fringes of the church. People still need songs that can just help them process, right? Still go to therapy, right? Still pray, like, you know what I mean?
That's
like,
right.
Still taking medicine if you're on medicine.
That's right.
But songs still are very much a necessity. Sometimes when you don't have a therapist or something, you can turn on a 3-minute song and it can just help you move a little bit further down the road than you were yesterday.
Well, I have a friend named Dan Wilt.
Love Dan.
You know Dan?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So Dan says this about songs, and it's just so true. Dan says songs are a place we go. So that in that 3 minutes, we're not just hearing a story, we're not just hearing something that may be true, but it's actually in some ways a portal into a different room, if you would, And to your point, like, that might be a healing room.
Yeah.
Or
maybe a challenging room.
But it's like it's a place we can go and we can actually dwell in, and it does something to us.
Yeah. Rose Petals is one of those songs. It's, again, when some folks react so viscerally to it sometimes, that I have to remove myself from it and go, I didn't write this with you in mind. Good or bad, right? Like I wasn't at home thinking like the folks that have heard Rose Petals and got angry at it. I've had to tell them I wasn't thinking of you when I wrote this song, right? And I wasn't aiming this song at you. I'm not pointing a finger at you, anything. Yeah. So if you're reacting this way, it's like you're in the room. Like I've invited you into a room of challenge. If you're reacting this way to a piece of art that was created without you in mind, then what does that say about you, not me? Yeah. Because if I aim this song at you, that says something about me. But if I just create this song and you look at it and react so angrily, then you have to search and seek with the Lord as to what is in your heart and why that this has
or what story you've picked up along the way, right?
Absolutely.
Like what story am I living into? Like what political story am I just blindly following, or like
a man came to me,
whose team am I on?
Yeah, a man came to me one time and heard the second. After he heard the second, he said, "When I heard the first verse and the chorus, I was mad at you. But then when you started singing the second verse about the mother, he started crying. He said, I never considered their mothers. Never once did I consider Trayvon Martin's mother or Mike Brown's mother or Sandra Bland's mother. Like, I never thought, it never crossed my mind that there's a mother weeping for their baby and that maybe she deserves some more of our emotion, not just us aiming. You know what I mean? He never thought about it, right?
So this is what happens when to go back to what you said originally, right? Like that's the kind of blindness that enters the conversation when we take somebody's body and use it as a political weapon or point, right? Like if it's just about like dunking for my team, then I wouldn't think of anybody's mom, would I?
Right.
Or their brother,
right?
Or the community they came from. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a beautiful story. Okay, let me ask you a question that's maybe this is a left turn.
Okay.
And it's I don't even know. Maybe this is an easy question or maybe it's hard.
Okay.
This podcast is called The Ferment.
Okay.
The idea in this podcast is things change. Things start as grapes, but they end up as wine. And you can't look at grapes and like you wouldn't intuitively think, oh, that's wine.
Yeah.
Or you wouldn't take a glass of wine and go, that's grapes. But it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's something in that metaphor that's about transformation and it's about change. And actually, Calvin mentioned this yesterday. Calvin was talking about how a lot of times change requires you to be crushed. And one of the recurring themes on this podcast is people's personal transformation has oftentimes come out of a season of pain. So I ask a lot of guests this.
Okay.
So talk to me. Has there been any moment in your life that's been like fermented? Have you experienced some transformation?
Yeah.
And then was it the result of like pain and difficulty?
Yeah.
Is there a story there? I'm just very interested in this.
I would say like this whole adventure thing with God started when I forget how old I was. But I was young. I was young in ministry, so I had to be 22, maybe something like that. So yeah, about 10 years ago. Yeah, actually. And so all one year, grandfather dies in a random house fire. Friend of mine, really good friend of mine, random car accident takes his life. And then my mother is diagnosed with breast cancer, all in the same, probably all in the same couple months, actually. It was just, so I found myself deeply, deeply offended with God. Especially concerning my mom. And my mom, she's still in recovery and things like that. She's still alive and with us, thank the Lord. But especially in regards to my mom, because my mom literally every day I can remember in the house woke up at 4 a.m., sang, prayed over the whole family, prayed over there's not a day that I don't remember my mom doing that.
Yeah. So it brings up questions, right?
So it brings up these questions of Lord, what in the heck? like hit, there's so many other people who deserve that.
I know some bad people.
You know what I mean?
I know some bad ones.
I know some really bad ones. And it's like my mom, my mom, is the most faithful person I know. My friend, my grandfather, like all these kind of faithful, good, right? People are dead or dying. Yeah. And I was so deeply, deeply, deeply afraid and mad. In ministry, still singing every Sunday, still going to rehearsal, still making set lists up, still singing these songs that I'm not even sure I believed.
Yeah.
But mad and offended with God. And I went to the most unlikely place for me because I hate men's conferences. I hate them so much.
We're gonna take our bare hands and we're gonna drive nails into wood for God.
I used to
we're gonna break these chains off.
Oh, dude, it was like that it was a grunt fest. I'm like, fam, I don't feel like listening to y'all grunt and fart about, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm cool, bro. Yeah. But I was ministering. My church was like, hey, we're doing a men's conference. You got to lead, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I didn't say fine. I said yes, but in my heart, I'm like, fine. Like, this is going to be the dumbest 3 days of my life. But my friend Doug Neal.
Shout out Doug.
That same conference does a talk about offense. And if it wasn't for anybody else in the room, it was for me.
You knew he was talking to you.
I knew it. And just, the age-old story. John is about to get beheaded. Jesus is close enough to where John can get a message to him, right? And then John goes, yo, like, hey, I'm here, right? We cousins. Yeah. You're the Messiah. Yeah. Help me. Yeah. And like, and Jesus goes the opposite way, and this is another message back and says, yo, the dead will be raised, the blind will see, and blessed is him who's not offended, right? Just that sovereignty of God, in that the glory of God and the story of God has nothing to do with my comfort. If I'm going to sign up for this adventure, I'm going to have to sign away my offense.
And the outcomes.
That benefit me or don't benefit me, right? Because John, at the same time, he was, what Jesus called him, the greatest man ever born of a woman, right? Yeah. It's like, and so you have these triumphs. You're speaking truth to power and all these things, and the triumphs along the way culminate in what seems like a defeat. Yeah. That's what you signed up for. I don't know. It sounds really cold sometimes. It sounds cold to me, but I say it to myself all the time. Is that you signed up for the adventure, and you have to believe that the same God that signed you up for the adventure, even though He's not safe, He's good, and that His goodness will in the end be for your good as well, even if it's in this life or if it's in eternity. Yeah. In this season, we're seeing, we're seeing some triumph and some struggles. Yeah. We're at this beautiful church in New Life. We're trying to find our place. We have community things going on. We have family things going on. But this is what we signed up for. Yeah. Right. We can't. So that was that fermentation for me, and it started there. And year by year, I've just been able to say, all right, Lord, it's your adventure. We're here. I am. And in that, amazing things, in that, awful things, hard things, but blessed is He who's not offended, right?
And I mean, Jesus said His Father reigns on the righteous and the unrighteous. It's like God's kingdom doesn't work the way we think it would sometimes. Yeah. All right. Hey, I just want to ask you one more question. Okay. It's a little bit philosophical as well. Okay. This is what I've been thinking about a lot lately. So I have to talk to you about it. I've just been thinking a lot about what is a good life? Actually, what is a good life? What is, if you, what should we hope for, And I've actually been talking to a lot of people about this. So I've been peppering that. So I'd love to hear you just And I didn't even give you this question early. I didn't give you any of the questions early. Fine. So everybody who's listening should know this is really unfair. But I'd love for you to riff. Like right now, it's October 20.
Yeah.
What do you think a good life is?
I don't know. End of podcast. No,
that's fine. It's literally fine.
I can't tell you. I mean, I think there's the Christian-y answers, right? I've lived for the glory of God or whatever.
Sure.
But then even some of that, like, yes, that's good. I've been questioning so much of what a good life is now that we're in a place of like providence, kind of,
Yeah.
And like success is good, but it doesn't also equal a good life.
Yeah.
Doing good things is good, but that doesn't necessarily equal a good life. The rich young ruler can tell you about both of those things.
Correct.
Right? And then there's the flip side. There's like, I could also be poor, right? And yet still following Jesus.
Yeah.
In some of the best lived, well-lived people, we don't know their names.
Yeah, they're
you know what I mean? Because there's no story written about them. Yeah. But did they not lead a good life? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a hard question.
No, I love it, and Dee, I actually love that you're struggling with it. I love that because I don't know, because that is the truth. It's not simple, even though it feels like it should be.
I think each of us has his or her own story that the Lord is writing.
Yeah.
And the humility that it takes to be who God says you are without being too high on yourself or too low on yourself is also good, right?
Totally.
But then God would say, "Who's good?"
That's right. No, it's true.
Like,
well, this is okay. So I have like you probably have one of these too. I got one of these text threads that never stops.
Uh-huh.
You have a friend text thread like
those.
Yeah. It's just like it's just humming.
Even when you think it stops, it just starts back up. Yeah.
One night I was like so tired. I went to bed like super early. Mm-hmm. I woke up the next morning. It was like 187 text messages. It's not a joke either. That happens.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
But I was actually talking to my friends today about like what is a good life. I've been thinking about it a lot. And this is what I wrote them today. I said, here's where I'm at. Get some friends, find a church, go to work, do something difficult. And if possible, find something that grips your heart enough so that when difficulty comes, there'll be a ballast that steadies you in the waves. Mm. Don't let your kids be people you hate. Mm. Try to make love to your wife. These are the only things I know.
That's not bad.
That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, because what makes that question so hard is that whatever I believe about what a good life is, I'm actively teaching to my daughter.
That's right.
Right? You know that moment. You know that moment when your kids are young and they actually start developing their own emotional reactions to things. And then one day they react so poorly to something. and in that same moment that you want to chastise them, you look at them and you go, holy crud, that's me.
Well, yeah, or even just this. The other thought there too is, this is the house that I've created for this girl to live in, and these are her reactions given the family system,
her environment. Absolutely,
and that's on me.
And that's on me, right? Like, so everything that even still, my daughter's 5. There's so much that she's reacting to. She doesn't even know. She gets that from me. She learned that from watching me react poorly to something. Yeah. And it's probably something dumb like a video game, right? Yeah. Like, or this poor reaction is set up by this environment that she's in that is completely controlled by me and my wife. And so I'm teaching my daughter things. I have no idea that I'm teaching them. Yeah. So I struggle so much with that because I've never been asked that before, but I know without like actually sitting my daughter down and going, this is what a good life is, I'm showing her what I think a good life is. Mm-hmm.
We're all living out of that.
And and I'm sure it's deeply, deeply flawed.
Yeah.
And we're squarely in middle class America now.
Yeah.
And that's shaping her in ways that I don't know, because I didn't necessarily grow up middle class. I grew up kind of like under, a touch under. mom and dad worked super hard.
Yeah.
But we got, we might have got to middle class. As I was graduating in high school, but I still know what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night and steal cheese from the refrigerator. You know what I mean? Like, and so like that's such a hard question. It's really tough.
Well, it's an unfair question. I'll admit that.
I don't mind it though. I love those things.
I do too. It's been in my brain a lot lately.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably that parenting thing. It changes you.
Anyway,
Dee, thank you for talking to us. Thanks for coming to the conference.
Thanks.
Stoked you're going to lead tonight. Dude. Yeah. And everybody, listen, go check out Dee's music. Check out Common Hymnal, and give him a follow on Instagram. And hopefully, sometime in the next year, Dee and I, we're going to put out our podcast. It's called Hot NBA Takes with Adam and Dee. That's not true.
I wish it could be that.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day. All right, everybody. Peace.